Hello everyone. Today we will learn step by step how to create this professional 3D product animation you see on the screen from scratch. Before we dive into the tutorial, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you find this content helpful. If you're ready, let's jump right into the video. Now, let's start by creating a new composition and giving it an appropriate name. Next, we'll create a new solid layer for the background and name it Background. Let's apply the 4-color gradient effect to this solid layer to set up our color transitions. We will adjust the color settings to best match the atmosphere of our scene. I'll quickly enter the color codes I prepared earlier. If you like, you can pause the video at this point to apply the exact same color codes. Now, let's drag our first phone model from the project panel and drop it onto our scene. In the settings window that pops up, select Match Comp Size and click OK to add the model to our composition. With the model selected, press the P key on your keyboard to open the position settings, and let's move the model further back along the Z axis. Next, hold down the Shift key and press S to open the scale settings. Let's scale up the model to fit our scene appropriately. After that, while holding down the Shift key, press R to open the rotation settings and adjust the orientation of the model. Once the orientation is set, we will adjust its final position, making our first model perfectly suited for the scene. Now that we've finished the first model, let's add our second phone model to the scene using the exact same workflow. Once the model is placed, we'll open the Scale settings to scale it up appropriately. Next, we'll activate the Rotation settings to adjust its angle and orientation to match our scene. Finally, we will tweak its position to bring it into the perfect spot, completing the layout. Great. Now, before diving into the animation, let's make sure all the properties for both models are visible. First, let's add a keyframe to the position and Z rotation properties of both layers. Move to the 2-second mark on the timeline and add another set of keyframes there. Now, let's head back to the very first keyframe. We'll move one of our models toward the bottom of the scene and the other toward the top, pushing them off screen. Next, let's jump to the final keyframes at the 2-second mark. Set the Z rotation value of the first model to 1 and the other model's value to -1. To wrap things up, select all the keyframes we've created and press the F9 key to apply Easy Ease. Finally, let's open the graph editor to adjust the speed curves and make the movement look incredibly smooth. Nice! Now, while staying on the last keyframe we created, let's move exactly 1 frame forward on the timeline. At this position, let's add a new keyframe to the Z, Y, and X rotation properties of our models. Next, let's navigate to the very end of our composition and change the rotation values of both models randomly to fit our scene. This ensures that once the models enter the screen, they will keep moving smoothly and continuously until the end of the video. Once this is done, let's jump back to the resting keyframe of our position settings, and let's add a new camera layer to our scene to give it some depth. Now, with our camera layer selected, let's right-click and choose Create Orbit Null from the camera menu to add a new null object to our scene. With this null object layer selected, let's open its position settings and add a keyframe. Move 20 frames forward on the timeline and create a forward zooming effect with our camera. Let's select these new keyframes as well and press F9 to apply Easy Ease. Finally, let's open the graph editor and adjust the speed curve of this camera zoom. Great! Now, as a final step, let's run a quick preview to check our work and see if there are any mistakes. Since there is a slight delay in the timing, I'm going to shift the keyframes a bit forward on the timeline to achieve a much cleaner and more dynamic animation. Great! We have successfully completed the first stage of our animation. Now, let's start adding the text elements related to our models. Select the Text tool from the toolbar and click anywhere on the scene. I've already prepared these texts beforehand. I'll copy the first text block and paste it into the text field on our scene. Next, let's open the Scale settings of the text to enlarge it and adjust its position. Double-click the text and change its color to solid black from the Fill options. Now, let's duplicate this text layer and drag it just below the first line. Double-click the layer again, copy our second text block, and paste it over this new text field. Since I want this subtext to look thinner, I'll double-click the text and change the font style from bold to regular. Finally, let's open the scale settings of the text and shrink it down appropriately. Great! Now, using the exact same steps, we are adding all the remaining text elements from the visual onto our scene. At this point, to keep the video engaging and avoid making it unnecessarily long, I'm going to fast forward through these repetitive steps. You can easily complete the rest of your text layouts in the same manner. Now, to keep our timeline organized, let's select all the text layers we've created and pre-compose them to group them together. Nice. Next, let's move forward toward the later part of our animation and drag and drop our smartwatch model onto the scene. In the Settings window, click Match Comp Size once again, and then hit OK to add the model to our composition. Let's open the scale settings of the model and enlarge it to fit perfectly within the frame. Finally, by tweaking the rotation settings, we'll adjust the orientation of the model correctly and move it into its final position on the scene. With a few quick, fine adjustments, we can align the watch's angle to blend seamlessly with our composition. Great. Now let's head back to the beginning of our timeline, select our smartwatch model, hold down the Shift key, and press R to bring up the rotation properties. Let's add a keyframe to both the scale and Z rotation settings. Next, move forward to the 1 second mark on the timeline, add another set of keyframes for both properties, and change this Z rotation value to 1. Now, let's go back to the very first keyframe on the timeline and set the scale value to 0. This way, our model will smoothly enter the scene by both rotating and scaling up over time. Select these keyframes and press F9 to apply Easy Ease. Finally, let's open the graph editor and adjust the speed curves of the keyframes. Nice. Now, as our final step here, I'm going to tweak the model's position one last time, moving it into the perfect spot right at the center of the text elements. Great, now let's add a new null object to our scene. Here, hold down the Control key on your keyboard and double-click the Anchor Point tool icon in the top menu. This will instantly move the anchor point right to the center of the null object. Now, let's place this null object layer exactly over our watch model and make the layer 3D. Next, parent the smartwatch model to this null object layer. Let's open the rotation settings of the null object layer. Select the smartwatch model again and press the U key on your keyboard to reveal all its active keyframes. Then navigate to the very last keyframe. From this point, move exactly 40 frames backward and add a keyframe to the Y rotation property of the null object layer. Finally, go to the very end of our composition and adjust the rotation value. This ensures that after the watch model enters the scene, it will keep rotating smoothly on its axis. Great. Now, because the camera zooms in, the position of the watch model shifts a bit within the composition. So let's readjust the model's position to fit our scene perfectly. Once the layout is fixed, let's create a rectangle to place right behind the watch model. To do this, make sure no layers are selected on the timeline. Then, select the Rectangle tool from the top menu and draw a rectangle that neatly covers the background area of the watch. Now, we want the corners of this rectangle to be rounded rather than sharp. To achieve this, let's open the Shape Layer properties, navigate into Rectangle Path 1, and increase the roundness value. This will perfectly round out the corners as desired. Great! Now let's collapse these setting tabs and drag the shape layer right below our watch model on the timeline. Zooming in slightly closer to the watch on the canvas, we will adjust the position of the shape layer to align it perfectly centered behind the watch model. Great! Now let's lock the null object layer toward the beginning of our scene. Next, select both the watch and the shape layer together, move to the exact moment when the camera finishes its zoom, and shift the starting points of these three layers to that specific timestamp. Now that the layers are synchronized, let's start animating the shape layer to bring it to life. To do this, let's open the Shape Layer properties and unlink the chain icon right next to the Size property. Now, let's adjust these values to turn the shape layer into a perfect circle. Next, open the transform settings and add a keyframe to the size property. Move 20 frames forward on the timeline and create another keyframe. Now, let's head back to the very first keyframe and change the size value to 0. Select these new keyframes, press F9 to apply easy ease, and then open the graph editor to fine-tune the speed curves of the keyframes. Right now, we have a minor issue in our scene. Because the anchor point is not in the correct position, the animation looks a bit off. To eliminate this problem, let's align the anchor point right to the dead center of the shape layer. This will completely fix the issue, allowing our animation to scale up flawlessly from the center. Great. Now let's go back to the first size keyframe on our shape layer and add a new keyframe there. Move 20 frames forward on the timeline, increase the size value, and bring it back to its original state. To match this transition, let's jump back to the very first keyframe, and this time, add a keyframe to the roundness property. Next, let's head to the final keyframe of the animation and restore this setting to its original value as well. This will make our shape morph smoothly from a perfect circle into a rounded rectangle. Now, select all these keyframes and press F9 to apply easy ease. Finally, let's open the graph editor to adjust the speed curve and smooth out the motion. To make the timing look even more dynamic, let's select this latest group of keyframes and shift them slightly forward on the timeline. Great! Now, to make the watch model slide smoothly to the left right as the shape layer opens, let's bring up the position properties of our null object and add a keyframe. Let's move 20 frames forward on the timeline and shift the watch model toward the left side of the screen to set its new position. Now, select these keyframes and press F9 to apply easy ease. Finally, let's open the graph editor and fine-tune the speed curve of this sliding motion. Great. Now let's run a quick preview to test this latest step and check if everything looks right. It's always a good habit to check your work frequently throughout the pipeline. It helps catch those tiny, easily overlooked mistakes before they stack up. Now let's write our text for this specific section of the scene. Select the text tool once again, copy our prepared text block, and paste it into the text field on our canvas. Double-click the text layer and change its fill color to solid white. Next, let's open the scale settings of this text layer to enlarge it and adjust its placement within the composition. I'll double-click the text layer again, select the lower description part, and tweak the font weight to make it thinner. Now, let's drag this text layer down the timeline so it aligns perfectly with the exact moment the watch slides to the left. To animate this text quickly, we are going to use the Animation Composer plugin from the window menu at the top. Under Motion Presets, navigate to the 2D Text Transitions section, find the effect that best fits our design, and apply it to our text. By the way, this plugin is completely free to use, and I'll share the download link with you in the description box below. Great! Now let's apply the exact same animation process to our other text layers. Double-click to open our main text composition and jump inside. Let's select all the text layers here together and open Animation Composer from the window menu at the top. Inside the plugin library, head over to the Text Presets section and open the Transition Lines category. Select the effect that best suits our style and apply it to all the highlighted text layers at once. Nice. Now, to make the movement more dynamic, we are going to stagger these text layers on the timeline with a 3-frame interval. This way, instead of all the text popping up at the exact same time, they will reveal themselves sequentially. This simple trick delivers a much smoother and more professional animation feel. Great. Now let's head back to our main composition. Let's find the exact moment where the text needs to appear on screen and shift our text composition layer to that specific timestamp. We're also going to add a quick aesthetic adjustment here. I want the bottommost text to reveal itself precisely when the smartwatch model scales into the scene. To do this, let's jump back into the text composition, find that specific layer, and drag it slightly backward on the timeline. Doing this creates a much more sequential, cohesive, and visually pleasing result. Finally, let's select all the layers in our composition and activate the motion blur switch to instantly give our animation that smooth, cinematic motion. And that's it! As you can see, by using the right animation techniques and timing adjustments, we've successfully completed a fully professional 3D product commercial. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to show your support. If you have any questions about the project, feel free to drop them in the comments section and I'll be happy to answer them. See you in the next tutorial with brand new projects. Take care.